The deep-sea research vessel moved slowly through the dark waters of the Pacific Ocean. Inside the ship, humans and aliens worked together. This was the year 2147, and Earth had been part of the Galactic Union for almost 50 years now. Commander Sarah stood at the main viewing screen. Next to her was Vex, a tall being from the planet. His skin was pale blue, and his large eyes watched everything with curiosity. The people were known for their advanced technology. They had been traveling through space for thousands of years before humans even learned to make fire. "We are approaching the coordinates," said the ship's computer. "Depth is now 3,000 meters." Sarah felt her heart beat faster. Her grandmother had told her stories about this place. Somewhere below them was history, real human history from a time when Earth was alone in the universe. The lights of the vessel cut through the darkness. Small fish swam away from the bright beams. The ocean floor came into view slowly. It was covered with sand and rocks. Old things from the surface world lay scattered everywhere. "There," Sarah said quietly. She pointed at something on the screen. It was a shape, a machine. It sat on the ocean floor like a sleeping giant. The metal was covered with growth from the sea. Creatures had made their homes on it, but Sarah could still see what it was. "A helicopter, a Black Hawk helicopter." "What is that object?" Vex asked. His voice was calm like always. The people did not show their feelings easily. "That is a U-60 Black Hawk," Sarah answered. "It was a military helicopter. My people used them for many things: transport, rescue missions, combat operations." Vex looked at the shape on the screen. To him, it was just old metal. They had machines that were 1,000 times more advanced. They could build ships that traveled faster than light. This helicopter was nothing to them. "It appears to be damaged beyond any use," Vex said. "The salt water has been destroying it for many years. It is just waste material now." Sarah shook her head slowly. "No, it is not waste." She walked closer to the screen. Her eyes studied every part of the helicopter. The rotors were bent. The body was crushed on one side, but it was still there. After all these years, it was still there. "This Black Hawk crashed in the year 2089, Sarah said. "That was 58 years ago. It was carrying medical supplies to an island after a terrible earthquake. The pilot flew through a hurricane to reach the people who needed help." "The pilot died?" Vex asked. "Yes, Captain, he was my grandmother's brother, my great-uncle." The alien said nothing. He did not understand why this information mattered. Dead was dead. The past was the past. His people did not think about such things. The research vessel sent out smaller robots to look at the helicopter more closely. The images came back to the main screen. Sarah could see the cockpit. The seats were still there. The controls were covered with rust and sea plants, but they were still there. "The structural damage is severe," the ship's computer reported. "Approximately 47% of the original frame has corroded. The engine components are no longer functional. The electrical systems have been completely destroyed by water." "As I said," Vex spoke calmly, "it is waste material. We should continue our survey of this area. There may be other things of scientific interest." Sarah turned to look at him. There was fire in her eyes, not anger but something else, something the alien had never seen before in a human. "We are going to bring it up," she said. Vex's large eyes blinked twice. This was his way of showing surprise. "Bring it up? For what purpose? The materials have no value. The technology is primitive. What could you possibly want with this broken machine?" "We are going to restore it," Sarah said. "Restore?" The alien said the word like he had never heard it before. "You mean repair, make it function again. That is not possible. The damage is too great, and even if you could repair it, the technology is outdated. You have much better aircraft now. This makes no logical sense." Sarah smiled. It was a small smile, but it was real. She had expected this response. The aliens never understood this part of human nature. They were smart. They were advanced, but they did not feel things the way humans did. My great-uncle died flying this helicopter, Sarah said. He gave his life trying to save others. This machine was his partner in that mission. It carried him into the storm. It deserves to fly again. Deserves, Vex repeated the word. A machine does not deserve anything. It has no feelings. It has no life. It is just metal and wires. Maybe, Sarah said, but we are human, and we remember, we honor. We do not forget the past. We do not throw away the things that matter. She turned back to the screen. The Black Hawk sat quietly on the ocean floor. It had been waiting there for 58 years, waiting for someone to find it, waiting for someone to bring it home. Send the message to Earth Command, Sarah ordered. Tell them we found the helicopter. Tell them we are beginning recovery operations. Commander, Vex said, the Galactic Council will not approve resources for this project. It has no scientific value. It has no practical purpose. Sarah looked at him again. Her smile grew wider. Then we will do it ourselves. Humans have been doing impossible things for a very long time. This will just be one more. She walked away from the screen. Her crew was already preparing for the recovery. They moved quickly, with purpose. Each one of them understood what this mission meant. Vex watched them work. He did not understand these strange creatures. They spent their energy on things that had no benefit. They cared about old machines and dead pilots. They wanted to rebuild something that should stay broken. But there was something in their eyes, something bright and strong, something that made him want to keep watching. Perhaps, he thought, there was more to humans than he knew. The recovery of the Black Hawk had begun. The news traveled fast. Within hours, people all around Earth knew about the discovery. The story was simple but powerful. A lost helicopter, a dead hero, a mission to bring both home. Commander Sarah stood in the communications room of the research vessel. On the screen in front of her was Admiral James Porter. He was the leader of Earth Space and Sea Command. His face was old, with deep lines around his eyes, but those eyes were sharp and full of life. Sarah, I knew, the Admiral said. We served together when we were young. He was the best pilot I ever saw. When that hurricane came, everyone told him not to fly. But there were children on that island. They needed medicine, did not think twice. Sarah nodded. She had heard the story many times from her grandmother, but it still touched her heart to hear it from someone who had been there. We can bring him home, Admiral, Sarah said. The helicopter is damaged, but it is still in one piece. We can recover it. I know you can, Admiral Porter replied. But recovery is just the first step. You want to restore it. That is a much bigger task. Yes, sir. The Admiral was quiet for a moment. He looked down at something on his desk. Sarah guessed it was a photograph, perhaps of himself. The Galactic Council will not help, he said finally. They do not understand why this matters. To them, we are just being emotional, wasting resources on something old and broken. I expected that, Sarah said. But we do not need them. We just need permission to proceed. Admiral Porter looked up. There was a small smile on his face. Permission granted, Commander. Bring that bird home. The connection ended. Sarah took a deep breath. The hard part was just beginning. Vex found her later that day. She was in the cargo bay, looking at the equipment they would need for the recovery. Large robotic arms, special containers, tools that could cut through metal underwater. I have been studying your history, the alien said. I wanted to understand this Black Hawk machine better. Sarah looked at him with surprise. They rarely showed interest in human history. They considered it too short and too violent to be worth their time. What did you learn? She asked. The US-60 Black Hawk was first made in the year 1979, Vex said. Your people used it for over 100 years. It carried soldiers into battle. It rescued people from floods and fires. It transported leaders and diplomats. It flew in almost every country on your planet. That is correct, Sarah said. But I still do not understand something. The alien's big eyes looked at her with genuine confusion. You have better machines now. Your current transport vehicles are faster, stronger, and more efficient. They use clean energy and can fly themselves. Why do you want this old thing? Sarah put down the tool she was holding. She thought for a moment about how to explain something that seemed so obvious to her. Let me tell you about Captain, she said. He grew up poor. His family had nothing, but he worked hard. He studied hard. He became a pilot. When the earthquake hit the islands, he was already tired. He had been flying rescue missions for 3 days with almost no sleep. Vex listened carefully. His people valued efficiency. They would have replaced with a fresh pilot. That was the logical thing to do. His commanding officer told him to rest, Sarah continued. Other pilots could take over, but knew the storm was coming. He knew that if he waited, no one would be able to reach the island for days. The children there would die without medicine. So he flew into the hurricane, Vex said. Yes, he flew into the hurricane. His helicopter was hit by lightning. His instruments stopped working. He could not see anything through the rain, but he kept flying. He found the island. He delivered the medicine. 47 children lived because of him. And then he died. Sarah nodded. On the way back, the helicopter was damaged too badly. He tried to land in the water, but the waves were too strong. He went down with his machine. The cargo bay was quiet. Even the machines seemed to be listening. Your people have a saying, Vex said slowly. Leave no one behind. I have heard this many times. That is right, Sarah said. We do not leave our people behind, and we do not leave their stories behind either. And his Black Hawk are connected. To honor one, we must honor both. The alien was quiet for a long time. Sarah could see that he was thinking deeply about her words. They had logic. They had technology, but they did not have this. This strange human need to remember, to honor, to never let go of the past. I would like to help, Vex said finally. Sarah blinked. She had not expected this. What? I would like to help with the recovery and the restoration. I do not fully understand why you do this, but I want to learn. Perhaps there is something valuable here that my people have forgotten. Sarah smiled. It was the first time she had seen any alien take interest in something so human, something so emotional. Thank you, Vex. We would be glad to have you. The next morning, the recovery began. The research vessel positioned itself directly above the helicopter. The crew worked in teams. Some controlled the robots that went down to the ocean floor. Others prepared the containers that would hold the pieces. Sarah watched from the command center. On the screen, she could see the Black Hawk clearly now. The lights from the robots showed every detail. The damage was bad, worse than she had thought, but she did not lose hope. Begin cutting the rotors, she ordered. Be careful. We want to save as much as possible. The robots moved forward. Their cutting tools glowed hot even in the cold water. Slowly, carefully, they started to free the helicopter from its resting place. Vex stood beside Sarah. He watched the work with new eyes. He was beginning to understand something important about these humans. They were not just emotional creatures. They were determined creatures. When they wanted something, they found a way to get it, even if it was difficult, even if others said it was impossible. The first piece came up 3 hours later. It was a rotor blade, bent and covered with sea growth. The crew cheered when it reached the surface. They handled it like it was made of gold. This is just the beginning, Sarah said quietly. We have a long way to go. But she was smiling. The Black Hawk was coming home. The recovery took 17 days. 17 days of careful work in the deep ocean. 17 days of cutting, lifting, and preserving each piece of the helicopter. The crew worked in shifts, but no one complained. Every person on that ship understood the importance of what they were doing. When the last piece finally reached the surface, the crew gathered on the deck. The containers holding the Black Hawk were lined up in rows, rust-covered metal, broken wires, bent frames. To anyone else it would look like garbage, but to these humans it was treasure. Commander Sarah walked among the containers. She touched each one gently as if greeting an old friend. Her eyes were wet, but she did not cry. There would be time for tears later. Right now, there was work to do. "Set course for the restoration facility," she ordered. "Full speed." The research vessel turned toward the California coast. On shore, people were already waiting. Word had spread across the planet. Volunteers had come from every country: engineers, mechanics, historians, ordinary people who wanted to be part of something special. Vex watched all of this with growing amazement. He had sent reports to his people on. They did not understand what was happening. Some thought the humans had gone mad. Others thought it was some kind of religious ceremony. None of them could believe that an entire species would care so much about one old machine. "I have a question," Vex said to Sarah one evening. They were standing on the deck, watching the stars above the ocean. "Ask," Sarah said. "Your people could build a new helicopter, an exact copy. With your modern technology, it would take only a few days. The new one would be stronger. It would work better. Why do you choose the harder path?" Sarah thought about this. It was a good question, a logical question, the kind of question they always asked. "Imagine you have a book," she said slowly. "An old book. It belonged to your grandmother. She read it every night before sleep. The pages are yellow. The cover is torn. You could buy a new copy of the same book. But would it be the same?" "It would contain the same words," Vex said. "Yes, but it would not contain the same memories. Your grandmother's hands never touched those pages. Her eyes never moved across those words. The new book would be clean and perfect, but it would be empty." Vex was quiet. He was beginning to understand, though it went against everything his people believed. They valued only what was useful, what was efficient. They threw away old things and built new ones. They did not look backward, only forward. But humans were different. They carried their past with them. It was heavy sometimes. It slowed them down, but it also gave them strength, a strength that they had never known. The ship reached California 3 days later. The restoration facility was a large building near the coast. It had been a museum once. Now it was filled with tools and equipment. Hundreds of volunteers waited inside, ready to begin. Sarah supervised the unloading of the containers. Each piece was numbered and photographed. Every bit of rust, every broken wire, every bent piece of metal was recorded. Nothing would be thrown away. Nothing would be forgotten. The chief engineer was a woman named Dr. Santos. She was 73 years old. She had worked on Black Hawks her whole life. When she was young, she had helped build them. Now she would help rebuild one. "This is the worst damage I have ever seen," she said, looking at the pieces. "The salt water destroyed almost half the helicopter. Many parts will need to be made from scratch." "Can it be done?" Sarah asked. Dr. Santos smiled. Her teeth were white against her dark skin. "Commander, I have been waiting my whole life for a project like this. We will make that bird fly again. I promise you." The work began the next morning. Teams of humans worked on different sections of the helicopter. They cleaned the metal by hand, removing decades of ocean growth. They tested every wire, every bolt, every piece of glass. What could be saved was carefully repaired. What was too damaged was rebuilt using old methods. Vex joined a team working on the engine. He had no experience with such primitive technology. His people used energy cores that could power a city, but he wanted to learn. He wanted to understand. "This part is called the transmission," a young engineer named Thomas explained. "It connects the engine to the rotors. When the engine spins, the transmission makes the rotors spin too." "A simple design," Vex observed. "Simple but beautiful," Thomas said. "These old machines had no computers to help them. Everything depended on the pilot. Human hands, human eyes, human judgment. When flew into that hurricane, he had nothing but his training and his courage. The alien looked at the rusted transmission. In his mind, he saw something new. He saw a human sitting in a metal box, fighting against a storm with nothing but his will. No artificial intelligence. No automatic systems. Just one person against nature itself. It was terrifying. It was also magnificent. Weeks passed. The restoration continued. People from around the world sent letters and money to support the project. Some sent old parts from other Black Hawks. Some sent photographs and stories. One woman sent the flight suit her father had worn when he flew in the same unit as. Sarah read every letter. She answered as many as she could. The project had become bigger than she had imagined. It was not just about one helicopter anymore. It was about all the helicopters, all the pilots, all the missions that had saved lives and protected people. One evening, Vex found Sarah in the main workshop. She was sitting alone, looking at the frame of the helicopter. Most of the body had been rebuilt now. You could see the shape of the Black Hawk emerging from the mess of parts. "I sent another report to today," he said, sitting beside her. "What did they say?" "They said I have spent too much time with humans. They think my judgment is becoming clouded by emotion." Sarah laughed softly. "And what do you think?" The alien looked at the helicopter. In the low light, it almost looked whole again, almost looked ready to fly. "I think," he said slowly, "that my people have forgotten something important. We are so focused on the future that we have lost touch with the past. We build new things and throw away old things without a second thought. But you humans, you remember, you hold on, and somehow that makes you stronger." Sarah nodded. She had always believed this, but it meant more to hear it from someone who had started with doubt. "We are almost there," she said. "A few more weeks and the Black Hawk will live again." Outside, the stars shone bright over California, the same stars that had seen on his final flight. The universe was vast and cold, but here, in this small building, human hearts were warm with purpose. The restoration continued. The news reached the facility on a cold morning in October. Vex brought it to Sarah himself. His blue face looked troubled in a way she had never seen before. "The Galactic Council has sent a message," he said. "They want to observe the final stage of the restoration." Sarah put down her coffee cup. "Observe? Why?" "They do not believe what I have told them. They think I am exaggerating. They want to see for themselves what humans are capable of." A delegation would arrive in 2 weeks, 20 representatives from different alien species, all of them curious, some of them skeptical. They had heard about the project, but they did not believe it could succeed. Sarah smiled. "Good, let them come. We will show them what humanity can do." The final weeks of restoration were the hardest. Every small detail mattered now. The paint had to be exactly right. The instruments had to work perfectly. The rotors had to spin at the correct speed. There was no room for error. Dr. Santos worked 20 hours every day. Her team followed her example. They checked every wire 3 times. They tested every system again and again. They would not fail. Not now. Not when they were so close. Vex worked alongside them. His long fingers were surprisingly good at delicate tasks. He helped install the new windows. He polished the metal until it shone. He learned the names of every part and what each one did. One night he asked Sarah about the pilot's seat. It was the one part of the helicopter that had survived almost completely. The leather was old and cracked, but it was still whole. "We could have replaced it," Sarah said. "New leather would be cleaner, more comfortable, but this is the seat sat in on his last flight. It has his shape in it, his sweat, his dedication. How could we throw that away?" The alien nodded slowly. He understood now. Every piece of this helicopter carried meaning. Every bolt and wire was connected to a story. To replace them would be to erase those stories, to forget the past. The delegation arrived on a bright Saturday morning. Their ships landed near the facility, filling the sky with strange lights. The aliens stepped out and looked around with curious eyes. There were tall ones and short ones. Some had scales. Some had feathers. Some had no bodies at all, just shapes of light that floated through the air. They came from worlds scattered across the galaxy. Most of them had never visited Earth before. The leader of the delegation was a being called Prime. He was from a species known as the Architects. They were famous for building great structures across the universe, cities that floated in space, rings that circled entire planets. They considered themselves the greatest engineers in existence. "So this is the famous human project," Prime said. His voice was deep and echoing. "A machine from your primitive past. I admit, I am curious why this matters to you." Sarah stepped forward. "Thank you for coming. We are honored to show you our work. Please follow me." She led the delegation into the main workshop. The aliens walked slowly, looking at everything. They saw the tools humans used, the photographs on the walls, the messages of support from around the world. And then they saw the helicopter. The Black Hawk stood in the center of the room. It was beautiful. The metal gleamed under the lights. The rotors stretched out like wings. Every part had been cleaned, repaired, or rebuilt with perfect care. It looked ready to fly. Prime walked around it slowly. He studied every detail. His species had built wonders that dwarfed this small machine, but there was something about it that made him pause. "You did this by hand," he said finally. "Your people working together for months." "Yes," Sarah replied. "You could have used machines, robots, automated systems. It would have been faster, easier." "Yes, but it would not have been the same." The alien leader was quiet. He looked at the helicopter for a long time. Then he turned to his delegation. "Do you see what I see?" he asked them. "This machine is not just metal and wires. It is filled with something else. Something I cannot measure or analyze, but I can feel it." The other aliens murmured among themselves. They felt it too. There was an energy in this room, a warmth that had nothing to do with temperature. It came from the hundreds of hands that had worked on this project, from the thousands of hearts that had supported it. "Love," Vex said softly. "That is the word humans use. They love this machine. They love the pilot who flew it. They love the people he saved. And that love has been poured into every part of it." Prime looked at the alien with new respect. "You have learned much during your time here." "I have learned everything." Dr. Santos stepped forward. She had been waiting for this moment. Her whole life had been building toward it. "The restoration is complete," she announced. "Tomorrow the Black Hawk will fly again." A gasp went through the delegation. They had expected to see a museum piece, a dead machine, not something that could actually work. "That is impossible," one of the aliens said. "The technology is too old. The damage was too severe. No primitive species could accomplish such a thing." Sarah smiled. It was a smile full of pride, full of joy, full of everything it meant to be human. "We are not a primitive species," she said. "We are humans, and when we set our minds to something, nothing can stop us. Not the ocean, not time, not even the doubts of our friends among the stars." She looked at the Black Hawk. Tomorrow it would rise into the sky. Tomorrow the spirit of would fly once more. Tomorrow the whole galaxy would see what humanity could do. But first there was one more thing to prepare, one more guest to invite, someone who had been waiting 58 years for this moment. Sarah picked up her communication device. It was time to call her grandmother. The morning of the flight was perfect. The sky was clear blue without a single cloud. The sun was warm on the faces of everyone who had gathered to watch. Thousands of people filled the field outside the restoration facility. Some had traveled from other countries. Some had traveled from other planets. Commander Sarah stood near the helicopter. Her heart was beating fast, but her hands were steady. She had dreamed of this day for so long. Now it was finally here. Next to her was an old woman in a wheelchair, was 93 years old. Her hair was white as snow. Her hands were thin and covered with spots, but her eyes were bright and sharp, the same eyes that had. "Is that really it?" asked softly. "Is that really his helicopter?" "Yes, grandmother," Sarah said. "That is the Black Hawk that Uncle flew. We brought it home." Reached out her hand. Sarah helped her stand. Slowly, with careful steps, the old woman walked toward the helicopter. The crowd watched in silence. Everyone knew who she was. Everyone knew why this moment mattered. Touched the side of the Black Hawk. Her fingers moved across the metal, feeling every curve and edge. Tears ran down her wrinkled cheeks. "Hello, old friend," she whispered. "I have missed you, I have missed him." The alien delegation stood nearby. Prime watched the old woman with great interest. He had built structures larger than mountains. He had created machines that could reshape stars, but he had never seen anything like this. An old woman crying over a metal box with spinning blades. And yet something stirred inside him, something he had not felt in thousands of years. It was small and strange, like a seed trying to grow in dry ground. Vex stood beside him. The alien had changed during his time on Earth. He held himself differently now. His large eyes seemed warmer somehow. "She waited 58 years, Vex said quietly. 58 years to say goodbye to her brother. And now, because of these humans, she will see his helicopter fly one last time." "It seems like such a small thing," Prime said. "It is the smallest things that matter most. That is what I have learned." The pilot for today's flight was a young woman named Captain Lisa Park. She had trained for months for this moment. She walked toward the helicopter with confidence in every step. Her flight suit was the same design that pilots had worn 100 years ago. It felt right. Dr. Santos handed her the keys. The old engineer was crying too, but she was smiling at the same time. "Bring her home safe," Dr. Santos said. "I will," Captain Park promised. She climbed into the cockpit. The leather seat welcomed her like an old friend. She looked at the instruments. Everything was working. Everything was ready. The crowd moved back. The aliens watched with wide eyes. Even the beings made of light seemed to hold their breath. Captain Park started the engine. The Black Hawk roared to life. The sound was deep and powerful. It rolled across the field like thunder. The rotors began to spin, slowly at first, then faster and faster. Wind rushed out in all directions, bending the grass and shaking the trees. Grabbed Sarah's arm. Her old face was transformed. For a moment she did not look 93. She looked like a young woman again, watching her brother fly for the first time. "He is with us," said. "I can feel him is here." The helicopter rose from the ground. It climbed slowly into the blue sky, steady and sure. The crowd began to cheer. Humans and aliens together, shouting and clapping and crying. It was the most beautiful sound Sarah had ever heard. Captain Park flew the Black Hawk in a wide circle over the field. She dipped the nose in salute. Then she climbed higher toward the sun. The helicopter became a black shape against the bright sky, like a bird, like a dream, like a promise kept. Prime stood very still. The seed inside him was growing now. It pushed against his ancient heart. It broke through walls he had built thousands of years ago. "I understand now," he said. His voice was rough, strange. "This is not about a machine. It is about the pilot. It is about every pilot who ever flew, every person who ever sacrificed, every heart that ever loved." "Yes," Vex said. "We architects build monuments to ourselves, great structures that show our power and skill, but we have never built anything like this. We have never put our hearts into metal and wire. We have never made our love fly." The helicopter came back down. It landed gently on the field, its rotors slowing to a stop. The crowd rushed forward, surrounding it with joy and wonder. Captain Park climbed out and was immediately hugged by 100 people. Sarah helped her grandmother walk to the helicopter one more time, placed both hands on the cockpit door. She closed her eyes. "Thank you for bringing him back," she whispered. Thank you for remembering." She kissed the metal softly. Then she turned and walked away. Her steps were lighter now. Her shoulders were. The weight she had carried for 58 years was finally gone. That evening there was a celebration. Humans and aliens ate and drank together. Stories were told. Songs were sung. The Black Hawk stood in the center of it all, surrounded by flowers and photographs and messages of love. Prime found Sarah near the helicopter. He bowed his massive head to her. It was a sign of deep respect among his people. "Commander," he said, "I came here to observe a primitive species playing with old technology. I was wrong. What I observed was something far greater." "And what was that?" Sarah asked. "The heart of humanity. Your people do not just build things. You give them meaning. You fill them with memory and love. That is a power we never knew existed. A power greater than all our monuments and machines." Sarah looked at the helicopter, at her grandmother laughing with old friends, at Vex teaching young aliens how to polish metal, at Captain Park surrounded by children who wanted to touch a real pilot. "We are a small species," Sarah said. "Young and imperfect. We make mistakes. We hurt each other, but we never stop trying, we never stop hopping. And we never ever forget the ones who gave everything for us." Prime nodded. He had lived for 10,000 years. He had seen empires rise and fall. He had built wonders beyond imagination. But he had never learned this lesson until today. "The Galactic Council will hear my report," he said. "I will tell them what humans truly are, not primitive, not emotional, but the most remarkable species in the galaxy, a species that carries its past into the future, a species that makes love fly." He bowed again, then walked away to join his delegation. They would return to their worlds with new understanding, new respect, new hope for what the galaxy could become. Sarah stayed by the helicopter as the stars came out. She thought about his courage, his sacrifice, his love for the people he saved. He had been gone for 58 years, but today he had flown again. And somewhere in the great mystery beyond the stars, Sarah believed he was smiling. The Black Hawk had come home. The story would never end.